Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the post-Easter pod. The football experience, regular crew with you again. I'm Caleb. He's Nev. Nev, how you doing? How was your Easter?
Pretty good, man. I'm still feeling bloated from the entire experience, and there's still leftover food which I'm still getting through, and I can feel every step that I take just hurts from the extra body weight from from all that. How about you?
Hey
How
man,
was
that's
yours?
what Easter's all about, though.
Yeah, it's about the food, isn't it? And
It's
yours,
all
man?
about the food. Mine was good, man. Got to see family. We just kept it simple with some pizza, but nearly finished the whole pizza by myself. So I was definitely in the Easter tradition in that sense.
Yeah, pizza definitely is one of those typical Easter foods, isn't it?
Yeah, Moorish. It was
Yeah.
that was great. And now getting through my chocolate, so I've got that to look forward to. And what we also have to look forward to, which we'll talk about later, but we got two huge games from the Premier League this midweek. But it seems right to start with a review of what we've seen this weekend, and it wasn't as jam packed as some other weekends you get on the calendar, but this weekend we did have a massive game at Wembley on Saturday afternoon. Little side note, I have no idea why there were Premier League games going on at the same time as the FA Cup semi-final. And I think the late Saturday afternoon slot was open, so I don't know why they didn't just play the semi-final in the late Saturday afternoon slot. But I just thought that was weird. But what we saw at Wembley was Liverpool come out on top, keep their hopes of the quadruple alive, while City's hopes of the treble are extinguished. And I guess off the back of that, what I have to ask you, Nev, is are Liverpool the number one team in Europe at the moment?
Look, I don't want to take anything away from that FA Cup game, but I did see a weakened Man City squad. He definitely didn't put out his main starting 11. Like if you look at that back line, like first off the goalkeeper, and obviously we'll touch on the that goalkeeping error. We'll obviously touch on that, but the back line, from the normal starting five, you only really had one in there in João Cancelo, and he played out of his position because he was playing on the right hand side, and then you had John Stones, and I know I picked him in my what was it, combined 11, but we did that obviously as a draft option. But John Stones, he hasn't been. It's usually Laporte and Diaz who are generally the starters, and then Stones is the third choice. You had Ake there, who has gotten some games in the last couple of fixtures, but he's been getting games I think at left back, not at centre back, and then Zinchenko. So you only had one there from the main back five. You had Fernandinho, who he played like the last 10, 15 minutes of the Atletico game, and then I don't know last time he played before that. Bernardo Silva is a regular starter. Jesus sees sort of regular games. Grealish is in and out. Foden is a regular. Sterling is in and out. So you only really had like two, maybe three players that are playing week in, week out there. Well, three players actually, in Bernardo Silva, Foden, and Cancelo. Sterling, Grealish, and Jesus interchange. And like, look, I don't want to take anything away from Liverpool's performance. Like they were ferocious in that, especially in that first half, and they put City to the sword, and rightfully so. Like if you're coming up against that, if that's what's put in front of you, you have to absolutely destroy that. And they did. They went out there and did it, and they got their reward for it as well. So credit to Liverpool for the performance that they put on. But the question for me, as a neutral, the question is how much did City aid in allowing Liverpool to put in that kind of performance? Because that was pretty much the same starting 11 the start of the previous week for Liverpool against a much, much stronger City side, and they didn't put out that kind of performance. So I'll ask that question to you.
For me, there's no doubt. But what I actually wanted to ask you before it was pretty much your question rewrapped though. But did you agree with Pep Guardiola's lineup selection, given that this is the semi-final of the FA Cup against your biggest rival at the moment? And a lot of them I could understand, but the Stefan one in goal is the perplexing one, and is the one that ultimately you could say cost them on the day. So I don't know what you felt about it. I'll give my take after yours. But did you agree with Guardiola's team selection for this game?
So look, you can look at it from two ways. Like, firstly, and this is one that that Simon Jordan mentioned, and that was that generally coming into the season, you have obviously contract agreements with players, and especially when it comes down to goalkeepers, you have an agreement with your goalkeeper. Okay, you're going to play all of the Carabao Cup games, including the final, or you're going to play all of the FA Cup games, including the final. And that's part of like the contract agreement or the gentleman's agreement before the season starts. It was something like that in place. I don't know. If it was, then fair enough, because if you as a manager, start breaking those promises, it could start to impact negatively across the entire team. So there is that aspect to consider. I'm not sure whether for you guys, for Liverpool, whether Kelleher played all of the previous FA Cup games, or whether Alisson has been playing all of the FA Cup games, or maybe the agreement was with Klopp, Alisson, and Kelleher that Alisson plays the semi and the final if they get to it, but Kelleher plays all of the Carabao Cup games, including the final. So who knows what it was? In hindsight, yeah, it was definitely the wrong decision, because I think there was like one or two like big opportunities for City, I think in the second half especially, that Alisson saved one-on-one. And that just goes to show what a great goalkeeper can do for you. Like, Alisson stopped that game from going to extra time, or potentially City mounting a comeback and winning 4-3 potentially. But yeah, look, in hindsight, it was a bad decision. But you know, you can't exactly go into that game knowing that that your goalkeeper is going to make that kind of a howler. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I think the first thing I want to touch on that is, if a manager's doing that, in my opinion, that's very ill-advised to be making promises to any player going into the season. Because I think philosophically, I believe that there should be no promises in football. There are no guarantees. There cannot be any guarantees in the game of football, because things just change quickly. I mean, all of a sudden you're on the cusp of, you're in the semi-finals and on the cusp of a treble for Man City, and you're coming up against your fellow juggernaut that it is Liverpool at Wembley Stadium in front of 80,000 plus people. I just don't think that's a game where I play that goalkeeper if I have real ambitions of winning the treble. So Guardiola's team sheet to me said he didn't believe that they could win the treble. I mean, you can't. It's not just the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper was bad enough for me, but then he changed half the team as well. I mean, Fernandinho came in. I know Walker got injured, and I know De Bruyne was probably a question mark as well. But he changed those players. Mahrez didn't play. So he changed a lot, and it just told me he felt like he needed to prioritize things in a different. He needed to prioritize things for the double, which, if they win the double, which is the Premier League and the Champions League, then you can't have any complaints, because they're the two most important ones to win. But at the same time, the FA Cup is no joke, and being able to win a treble is an unbelievable achievement. And you've come this far to get that close, and Yeah, so the real one I take issue with is the goalkeeper, because the goalkeeper's not running around. You're not asking him to play in midweek or whatever it is. He's stationary basically. I mean, I know he comes off his line, but I don't see any need to have to change that up. Obviously, you're talking about promises. If that's the case, I don't believe in that. So for me, if I was a City supporter, I'd be very disappointed in that team sheet, because for me it was the team sheet why Liverpool won this game. I mean, did that City team have enough quality to beat Liverpool? Yes, but their chances of doing it were greatly reduced. And then obviously it wasn't just the goalkeeping mistake, it's what happened in the lead up to the goalkeeping mistake. I mean, Fernandinho gets the ball in midfield, doesn't play forward, looks back. And then John Stones with for me, in all honesty, I think John Stones should take just as much blame for that goal as the goalkeeper. I know the goalkeeper has made the hounding mistake, but John Stones to roll his foot over the ball 2, 3, 4 times while Liverpool have come out in this manner and look to press you from the first whistle, and you've got an inexperienced goalkeeper behind you, and you just attract the pressure and then roll this pass back to him. It was like putting the lamb out to the slaughter. And I just thought, that just told me, like, for me, I'm completely out on John Stones now. I don't think he'll ever be a world-class centre-back. I just don't think it'll ever happen. He's been serviceable for years now, but he always has this in him. And for all those years, it was always about, he can play out from the back so well. He's so calm in possession. All he does is stand still on the ball, attract pressure, and then when there's pressure around the ball, he just slides it to someone else to let them deal with it. That's not playing out from the back. Playing out from the back is taking the ball and going forward and driving into space and then playing progressive passes, even if it is a long ball. I mean, we saw Virgil van Dijk's radar's been off for a couple of weeks now, but that's what he's known for. He is sort of the sweeper, but he plays those balls from the back, and he can play out from the back. But John Stones, for me, has never been a player who can play out from the back. Yeah, sure, he looks fine because he's all calm and everything, but he's just attracting pressure. So I thought he should take a big portion of the blame, as obviously Guardiola has to take a massive, the lion's share of the blame for this, because to send out that message and to sort of go into this game and just hope that you can get a result against what was a full strength Liverpool team, it was just never going to get the job done for me.
I disagree with the whole blame being put on John Stones for that moment. Like that was not a hard ball to deal with. He didn't ping it into him, and if you watch it again, that the keeper he took a touch, he took a second touch, and then after his second touch, that's when he stuffed up. He had enough time to clear it first time. Like any other keeper would have taken. Firstly, they would have taken a better touch if they were going to take a touch, or they were just going to clear it first time. Like he had enough time. It was not a ball under pressure. The keeper himself put himself under pressure. So I completely disagree with that sentiment.
No, but before you go on to your next point, you said it yourself, a different keeper, another keeper. It wasn't another keeper. It was Zach Steffen. John Stones has played for this team for long enough to know who he should be passing to and who he shouldn't be passing to. Why would you attract pressure to you so that Mane can start his press from 10, 15 yards away and then roll the ball to your goalkeeper, who isn't Edison now, who is Zach Steffen? He's not renowned for playing out from the back. Why, if I'm John Stones, why when I have the ball under control and I can look forward, if the ball's going to go forward, why am I not the one delivering it? Why am I asking my inexperienced goalkeeper, who's not renowned for playing out from the back, to now play the ball forward? That's where I think he deserves a lot of the blame. There is no doubt that Zach Steffen had enough time to deal with it, but why was he the one who had the ball at his feet anyway, when John Stones had so much time to look for a forward pass in that moment? Because it's not a different goalkeeper. It's not Edison. It's Zach Steffen. He's got to know that.
Yeah, well, look, while you do have a point with that, I still disagree with the notion that any blame can be put on the goalkeeper. If it was a really bad pass, then on the Stones, if it was a really bad pass, then yeah, sure, but it wasn't. It was the pass was fine, the play was fine up until the goalkeeper tried to take that second touch and he missed. I think he mistouched it from memory as well. And if you remember, there was a very, very similar moment the week before with Edison and Jota. There was
of course, but the
almost an
different.
identical moment with the same goalkeeper, or with the different goalkeeper.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, but you said it. But Edison got out of that because that's Edison, and I trust him to get out of it.
yeah,
That's the difference.
that was cutting it close by like a
Yeah, he loves
fraction
to
of a
do that.
second. Yeah, I haven't seen him do it there, like on the line.
Oh no, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But I do agree with the team sheet, and I think I even said that at the start. Like Guardiola, like Liverpool put out pretty much their strongest 11, and yeah, City pretty much rested their strongest 11, bar 2 or 3 players.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know why, because I'm pretty sure City are playing in midweek, and Liverpool obviously are
I don't
playing
know, but
again. I get that they
yeah,
had Atletico
but they
in the
both played on
midweek,
the
but
same night. They both played on the same night, and I do know that I know there's like with sports science and all this stuff. There's like you now have the technology to assess injury risk based on based on player load and all that stuff. So maybe if the physio staff was saying, "Hey, look, there's a 60 because we had to travel from Madrid as well." Maybe there's a 60% chance or like a 50% chance that like increased chance that players can get injured just from like a fatigue based injury. Maybe that's a reason because Liverpool didn't have to. Only have to travel from Liverpool to London, whereas City had to go from Madrid back to Manchester, then to London. So if there's a sports science reason behind it, fair enough to a certain extent. If it's just Guardiola tinkering, that's on Guardiola.
yeah, and it didn't feel like tinkering; it felt like resting, which was probably the disappointing thing because it's a big game, semi final at Wembley. But going back to the original question that we actually started with on Liverpool, if they're at this present moment the best team in Europe, for me, your squad depth and being able to rotate and being able to play competitive teams in games like this when you know that there's important games coming up over the horizon, that's got to factor into it. So obviously we're talking before the Liverpool United game, and who knows? I mean, Liverpool might have to name a weaker lineup than they did on Saturday against United, and it might bite them in the ass tomorrow morning or later today for you. So it might be a different discussion in a couple of days' time. But as it stands, as we're having this discussion now, I think there's still 1A, 1B, but now I think Liverpool are 1A. I think City are only in that 1B category because of the lead in the Premier League, the easier perceived schedule, and having the 1 point lead as it is. So that's why they're still there for me. But this for me isn't what a team who we've been speaking about all season in this way should have come to, whether it be because he had to rest players and he had to freshen things up. But if he does have to, like, why is the team he's putting out there just not that strong, not that convincing? Whereas if Liverpool freshen things up, they look convincing when they freshen things up. Their squad depth, as we've spoken about, and as you've spoken about numerous times on the pod, is second to none now, and that looks like it gives Klopp the confidence to go for all 4 of these trophies full tilt. So for me, I think I've switched it up from Man City being 1A and Liverpool 1B to now it's the other way around for me.
Look, if we include squad depth, then yeah, I think I'd agree with that. But if we just go like on strongest starting 11, I'd still go City over Liverpool based on the performance that City put in the week prior, and that was, I think, their strongest 11. And I'm just looking at the team sheet now, and like, besides Fernandinho, like, you got Jesus. I think he started against Liverpool, didn't he, in that first game, a week ago, right?
Yeah.
Grealish didn't play. Foden started. Bernardo Silva started. Did Sterling start or not? I think Sterling might have started as well. So out of the front line and the midfield, only Fernandinho is really the only one that's not playing this season. Jack Grealish is in and out every week, like he's starting, not starting, starting, not starting. And the backline was obviously horrific. Like that backline is worse than Arsenal's. But like, even then, like, those players like Grealish, Silva, Foden, they couldn't keep control of the ball at all. Like, they were just misplacing the pass, like misplacing passes. They were taking touches and like it was just rebounding off them as if they were a brick wall. So I don't know what was with that team, whether it was just because Liverpool pressed them more, but you would have for me, you would expect that team to have done a lot better, especially that midfield, because that midfield does, it's, to me, on paper it should be fine. But yeah, look, I think with the best starting 11 versus best starting 11, I think for me, Man City is one, like as you referred to it. I think they're still 1A, and that showed in the week prior. I'm only basing it on the week prior, and they might still verse each other They might still verse each other in the Champions League final, perhaps, and then maybe we will see once again strongest starting 11 against strongest starting 11, and then that will be the game that will be the decider, I suppose.
Yeah, and it could set up to be that come the end of the season. Just on your midfield and front points, I agree that those positions for City are very interchangeable. They can almost play their backups in and still be as strong. But what really killed them in this game was, who were they receiving the ball from? Well, all of a sudden you've got, I mean, Zinchenko and Cancelo are pretty good on the ball for fullbacks. I mean, Cancelo is excellent.
Zinchenko was horrible this game.
And I wanted to say that going forward as well. But just to touch on that point about them not being able to get the ball in and lock the ball in, the midfielders and the front players. Well, now they're receiving it. They're not receiving it from Edison and Laporte and Stones or Diaz, whoever's playing at the time, but they're receiving it from Stefan, Stones, and Ake. And so I just think those three positions are so crucial to your defensive solidity, but also your ability to build attacks and start attacks. And I just thought, once that whole foundation is changed, barring Stones, who is the weakest of the players that regularly plays in there, I just thought City were ready to crumble, and they did in that first half. I mean, credit to them, they're such a good side that they made a game of it in the end. But even in the second half, they scored early, but I thought Liverpool could. There wasn't a massive wave after they scored. They had chances in there because obviously Liverpool always give away chances. We say this. But in terms of the patterns of play, I thought Liverpool got their foot back on the ball and they looked pretty comfortable for the most part there, but until the right at the end. But you touched on Zinchenko, which is the next point, because I think the report after the game at Atletico was Kyle Walker was in a moon boot after that game. I think that's what I read. So there's a good chance he's missing probably for the rest of the season, maybe, if that's the case. I haven't read the updates on when they expect it back, but he would be a huge blow in the sense that now Zinchenko has to play, or now Ake has to play at left back. And that, when you get to the fine details like playing Real Madrid in a semi-final of the Champions League or Liverpool in the final potentially, those details come into play now. And as we've seen from the team selection for this FA Cup semi-final, and as we've probably said a little bit throughout the season, the cheeky thing or the sneaky thing about the City squad is it's not that deep. you always see 2 or 3 teenagers on the bench for every game. So it's not the deepest squad. It is packed with quality when everyone's fit, but in terms of depth, it's not as deep as the Liverpool squad. I think we both agreed on that just before. So going forward, that's probably another reason why I just give Liverpool the edge. Will it matter for the Premier League? I'm not sure because those fixtures are very winnable for City, and there are some fixtures where Liverpool can slip up. So, although I mean, we say that race for top four, which we'll touch on later, is so up and down. I don't know if anyone wants it. But yeah, that's probably just another thing that I would say in terms of why I've now just. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about Chelsea and City and Liverpool's chances to reach their respective ambitions and how quickly things change in football because the only team left with those ambitions now are Liverpool. And that got me thinking, I want to throw it to you. Just how highly would you rate the achievement if Liverpool were able to accomplish the quadruple? How high would that team be on any list for a single season team?
Well, it hasn't been done yet, has it? Like, not even Barcelona and like those early 2010s did a quadruple, did they? And I'm pretty sure they have a fourth competition similar to the
No, I
World Cup,
don't. I
or they
don't think
don't.
Spain has a fourth
They don't.
competition. I think no, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, it's hard then to compare it to other teams if they don't have a fourth competition, because there's been quite a few treble winners over the last couple of years since Barca first won it in 08-09. Like, so Barca have won 2 trebles already. Inter have won a treble. Bayern have won 2 as well, I think, under Heinkes and Flick. Real Madrid haven't won a treble, and no English team has won a proper treble. I know City won a weaker treble. They won the Carabao Cup, FA Cup, and the league. I'm not sure if it was last year or the year before. But yeah, no team has won the treble in England since United in '99. Now, quadruple, obviously that talks a lot about squad depth as well. It would be if they can then go on to win the UEFA Super Cup and then also the Club World Cup, like, so back it up with those 2 trophies, then I'd probably rate it above those other treble winning seasons from the different leagues, because those teams, I'm pretty sure they all went on to back it up by winning those extra trophies.
And I think I was going to say that I think that's a good deciding factor. You've almost got to wait until you get to play in the trophies that winning the trophies from the season before let you play in. I know British media love to make fun of the Club World Cup, but for me, I actually rate the Club World Cup quite highly. To have that gold badge on your shirt actually means quite a lot. And I know that the South American champions always come in ready to really give everything to try and win that competition. So I think that competition's one that's unnecessarily disrespected, and I actually rate that one pretty highly as one to win. Obviously, the winning that tournament isn't the main part of it. Winning the Champions League previously is the main part, but yeah, I don't think that should be disrespected, and that's I think.
I will also chuck in the Community Shield, because I think Barca did win. They won their version of the Community Shield, so they won 6 within that 12-month period. So they won 6 trophies out of 6. So
Yeah,
Liverpool also need to win that. So, like, as I guess meaningless or whatever you want, if people don't rate it, it's still a trophy. And that would be one that they need. So they pretty much need to win everything that they enter, because they won everything the season prior. Because getting into the Community Shield, that's FA Cup winner and league winner, and then Super Cup is Champions League winner, and then I think UEFA changed it, didn't they? That Champions League winner goes on to the Club World Cup. It's not the Super Cup winner anymore. So they're automatically in the
Yeah,
Club World Cup, but they
yeah,
still need to win that Super Cup anyway. So yeah, for me they need to win everything.
yeah. And to probably go above, look, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on a Community Shield. If they didn't win that, I'd still put this. If they win everything else, I'd still put this Liverpool team above that Barcelona team on merit of competition, because Real Madrid weren't in a great place when Guardiola and I know Barca weren't in a great place after Rijkaard's second or third season, and Guardiola really came in. Obviously, we know what that team did when he came in, and they were a fantastic team, maybe the best club side ever for that period of time. But Real Madrid weren't the Real Madrid they would become in a couple of years' time when Mourinho and Cristiano Ronaldo came over. They were still just on that precipice just before that. Whereas this Liverpool team's going up against an absolute juggernaut in Man City. And if it turns out that they have to beat, and Chelsea, may I add, and if it turns out they have to beat Man City and Chelsea on the way to the FA Cup final, they have to beat Man City in the league to win the league title, and maybe they have to beat Man City in the Champions League final again. I mean, I'll be sick of the sight of them, but for me to accomplish that, and let's say as well, let's just throw in Chelsea in the mix in the League Cup final. To accomplish that, I know other countries don't have a fourth competition, so you bang on there. It's hard to compare that, but just in terms of what they have to play, what the points tallies will be for these teams, and look, the sneaky thing is Liverpool are a really good defensive team if you look at the record. So when you look at the record book in 10 years' time, you'll look back at it and say, wow, that was a really good defensive team. They score so many goals. They play a style that will be remembered, that people will remember fondly. So for me, you could probably take out only that Community Shield. But if they win everything else, I think they'll go above that Barcelona team even. But it's a huge if, because I know a couple of weeks ago I did my percentage chance on what I thought those three teams that we talked about, Chelsea, City, and Liverpool, were to reach their ambitions. I think that Liverpool were under 3% at that time. I think after winning this semi final and obviously getting through the quarterfinals of the Champions League, I think they've bumped up to 7% according to my calculations. So obviously that's still low, but 7% to win all three trophies left. I mean, to even still be in the hunt to win a quadruple is a good achievement. But I mean, the fact is, it could all be a letdown. They could win. They could win nothing. I mean, I think there's a chance that that happens as well. So while we want to put it into context, we got to understand. Obviously, there's a long way to go for this team.
Yeah, and I've heard some people say that like they have a like going into the Man City Liverpool game, they have a sneaky suspicion that whoever won that game would go on to win the FA Cup, but they would go on to lose the Champions League just because it is that knockout format competition, and they would have already like felt that defeat, so they'll want to get that. I guess they'll probably play with that extra sort of motivation for the if they meet each other in the final of the Champions League. So there's that sort of it's just that weird way the universe works. I guess you can put it down to that. Like there's no necessary science behind it. It's similar to when in again like we've seen that so many times like in football where like one team has a gilt edge chance and then a minute later the other team is scoring at the other end. It's similar to that sort of like the universe sort of punishing you for not taking advantage of your opportunity or something along those lines. Like I said, no science behind it. And also, I guess before we do sort of move on to other topics, I do want to. I know you sort of played down the 0809 Barca treble or sextuple, but I do want to, because you said that Real Madrid were sort of they were coming towards the end of that Galactica, the first Galactica era. I do want to mention though that the treble that Enrique won with Barca, because the previous year Real Madrid won the Champions League, And then the following 3 years, they won 3 in a row. So that was a very strong Real Madrid team that Barca was coming up against in the league, and also like I guess they didn't verse each other in the Champions League that year, but still like they were just coming off being winners, and then they obviously went on to win 3 in a row. So there's also that treble winning team. I don't think they won the six-tuple because I think they lost their version of the Community Shield, but they did win the Super Cup and Club World Cup, so they won 5 out of 6.
Yeah, no, you're right. That I overlooked that team because we were comparing obviously Guardiola's first one, but I guess that team felt a little bit different in the sense that that was like almost a one season wonder thing with that team because they got, I think it was Neymar the season before, or was it that season as well that him and Suarez both came in?
I think it was that season.
But yeah,
I think Rakitic came because like I think it was just after the World Cup. Like Suarez joined, Rakitic joined. I think Neymar might have already been there for a season, if I'm not mistaken.
you know what that actually felt like. That Barca, the way they assembled that squad and the players that they brought in, it felt like Golden
Heat?
State in the summer of.
Oh,
It felt like Golden State in the summer of 2016
yeah.
when they added Kevin Durant to an already exceptional team. I mean, Barcelona just stacked the books with that team.
Yeah.
That front three is unreal. Suarez, Messi, and Neymar. I
They
mean,
scored 100
how
goals
can you
that season
compete?
as well, didn't they?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And that was with Suarez. He was banned for the first bit of that season after
Yeah.
biting
Chiellini.
Chiellini in the World Cup. Yeah, so no, you're right. You were right to pull me up on that. That was a tremendous treble-winning side. And I mean, they've got an argument themselves to be above that initial Guardiola side. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
too right on that.
and I think they won. They weren't necessarily one season in the Champions League. I suppose they were, but like I think they did win like another 2 league titles in a row with that same squad before Neymar left. So because Real Madrid weren't winning league titles, that was Barcelona.
No, they weren't.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think like Real have only won like 1 or 2 in the last like 5 years or 6 years. They've like whereas it's been Atletico last year, but then Barca's won every league title for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like there's
And it's
definitely teams there that have an argument.
oh, definitely. And Liverpool don't have an argument yet, but obviously we're a football podcast, so we want to speculate and bring up topics like this because it's fun when we go with that kind of hyperbole. But you're just talking about Real Madrid not winning league titles. Well, let's shift our focus over to Spain just quickly. They are 99.9% going to win the league title this season because
Yep.
this was the weekend where the La Liga title race door, while it was probably like, you know, when a door hangs on just right on the edge before it's closed, and then like if a gust of wind comes through, it pops it open. That's how bare that the La Liga title race was hanging on, but it's completely closed now. That door's locked. And Real Madrid, the comeback kings, it seems at the moment, with a 2-goal comeback from 2-0 down to win it 3-2 at Sevilla in a really eventful game. But honestly, they deserve to win it, especially in that second half. They overran Sevilla. It was the kind of game where even in the first half, I didn't think they deserved to be 2-0 down. Sevilla got some lucky breaks, but it did get me thinking about a player who's going to be crucial, although he's missing the first leg of the semi-final against City. But Eder Militao was the he looked like he was determined to bring the whole operation down for Real Madrid. He was all over the shop in that first half. I don't know if you saw the goals, but for the Rakitic free kick, I mean, that was a cardinal sin in the wall. I have no idea where he's jumping to. He's just jumped out of the way of the ball and tried to flick it with his heel when if he just stood and took it in the midriff, he would have just stopped the ball. It wasn't a terribly great free kick from Rakitic. And then for the second goal, he goes in and tries to close down the space for Jesus Corona and just gets completely too tight, almost a little bit like Mbappe in the first leg of that PSG Real round of 16 game, where his positioning's all wrong and he lets him get the inside channel. like I said, he was a player who was right up there in the second tier of my centre backs in the world. But he has fallen off a cliff, and he doesn't look like he can play centre back, especially as one of the two, and especially with a player like Alaba, who I don't think is a leader back there as the centre back. So it got me thinking about two positions, and I'll touch on the other one later. But the first position is the centre backs of the best centre backs in the world, really, the ones who you expect to be there come the end and challenging for the Champions League title. And it made me think, and we've already touched on it. I've already touched on it. Real Madrid's problems at the back, but I don't think Alaba and Eder Militao are a good enough partnership to get past Man City in the semi-finals. And I don't think either of them are top tier world class. I think if I had to have a top tier of world class centre backs, I would have, and this is a reason why Bayern aren't in the competition anymore, because I don't think they had one of them. PSG capitulated because I believe they have Marquinhos, who is definitely in that top tier of centre backs in the world. Inter have Skriniar, who flirts with being top tier. I'm not sure if I can put him in there, but I can't blame him for the fact that Inter have Edin Dzeko up front, who, in all honesty, I like Edin Dzeko, but he's not good enough to get you past Liverpool, is he, really, at the end of the day? So Skriniar sort of flirts just there. Virgil van Dijk, we know. Ruben Diaz, we know. Definitely top tier. I don't think I'd put PK in there anymore. He's just a bit too old. So I don't. They're probably the only centre backs that I could see who I would put in absolute top tier. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that position in world football, or if you have any others to add there.
Did you mention Koulibaly?
See, and I have trouble with him as well, because I watched that Napoli Roma game, and I think he's fantastic. He's flirting. I put him with the Skriniar, but he plays for Napoli. I want to see him in the semi-finals of the Champions League at least once, just to see.
Yeah.
And another one who flirts with it is Rudiger as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention Rudiger for a shout. But yeah, besides the ones that you mentioned, like if I'd have to obviously like bring up team lists and stuff and have a look, but like none really come to mind. Like just off the top of my head, like as top like 5 or top 10 centre backs in the world at the moment. So like I can't really give a shout out to anyone besides those. Did you mention Laporte?
Yeah. Laporte's almost, and a few seasons ago I would have put Laporte as one of those ones flirting with being a world class centre back, but in the last couple of seasons I put him closer to a third tier, trying to get into the second tier. He might be the bottom of the second tier. He's not up there with those names that we just mentioned, who are probably second tier, like Koulibaly, Skriniar, who are really knocking on the door of first tier, and Rudiger. But he might. See, it's unfair to put him even with those players for me. I think Laporte is one step below even those players, who I don't quite put as the top.
Yeah. See, like because like I would have given Ramos a decent shout out, but like he was injured most of last season as well, and this season he's barely featured just because of injuries. But like before last season, I think he would have been up there as a top tier.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I guess another one who, I don't know where he fits in, because and you could look at it because they're directly playing each other in the Champions League semi-final, but the Alaba versus Laporte discussion, I would probably be tempted to put Alaba just slightly ahead of Laporte, but I don't know if that gets Alaba into that tier with Koulibaly, Skriniar, and Rudiger. He's probably in the same tier as Laporte, just for me, just slightly better. And it would have. You're right. It would have been interesting to see how PSG fared if they could have put a defense out that had Marquinhos next to Ramos. That would have been, well, on paper at least, a really strong defense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we know PSG's problem wasn't personnel; it's just the culture of the club.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just have this culture of not being. I just don't feel like the football gods want to reward them for what they do, because what they do isn't team building. It's not building like a squad of players who are willing to go to battle together every week. It's just building individuals who are hired guns, and they all just walk out on the pitch and they have their names, but they don't necessarily play as a team. So that's just the feeling I get from them.
Yeah. Where would you rate Kimpembe?
So yeah, Kimpembe is another one. Probably he's in that Laporte category for me.
Yeah.
He's got a mistake in him. He might be a little bit lower than Laporte, but I think they're in the same tier. Him, Alaba, and Laporte. And funnily enough, they're all left-footers as well, so makes it a bit easier to compare them.
Yeah, a little bit off topic. Before we move on, but do you reckon Kimpembe looks like a doppelganger for Michael B. Jordan?
Oh yeah, maybe like a slight. I don't know how like tall and how much Michael B. Jordan weighs, but
just in the
maybe
face.
Kimpembe's yeah, it is. It's in the face. Maybe Kimpembe's the more athletic version.
I don't know, man. Like if you see Michael B. Jordan, like especially like for his,
he's played boxes and stuff, hasn't he? So
but like they look like they could be like brothers, like if not twins, like for me anyway. Like, but yeah, like that's something I noticed, and I just want to see if any other people agree with me about that. Like Kimpembe and Michael B. Jordan.
Drop it in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. Put it down in the comments of whether you agree. But yeah, that's definitely one for me. And I swear, if we just for another second, since we're on doppelgangers, I swear, Jesus reminds me of someone, but I just can't I just can't put a face to the memory of it. But like, or maybe just because like Jesus always looks like he's concerned all the time.
Yeah,
that's his only emotion. Yeah, that he's concerned all the time. But yeah, like I think that could be a deep dive topic one day. Like we just go football doppelgangers.
Yeah, football doppelgangers or players. We should term it like Jesus face or something.
Yeah,
now. These players who always have this certain look on their face.
Yeah, players with like weird faces.
And so I think I hit on the centre backs topic. I think Real Madrid really need Militao to start showing some of the form from the start of the season.
You mentioned that he's going to be suspended. I thought he was suspended for the second leg of the Chelsea game, so he should be available.
Oh no, yeah, you're right. Thanks for pulling me up on that. Yeah. You're right. He got. We even talked about the challenge that he made for that yellow card. Yeah, you're 100%.
Yeah.
So even better, we get to see how he reacts in this because they don't have any important games in La Liga left. They're 15 points clear now. Barca have a game in hand, but they lost this morning, so completely their title now.
I have this sneaky feeling that Real are just going to pull through based on their experience and they seem like they're showing this sort of like fight and like willingness to, especially to come from behind to get a result. And like they've shown in the last couple of games, like they showed it just now against Sevilla, they showed it against Chelsea, they showed it against PSG. They just have that sort of that belief in them. I don't know, it's a really sneaky feeling for me that they could get the job done against City.
You know what's funny? For two teams, and we almost need Mati on this podcast because it's a sort of written in the stars sort of thing, but the thing that it felt like after Real Madrid's last couple of comebacks and with Liverpool being the only team left chasing their ambitions out of that Chelsea City Liverpool group, it just feels like a really written in the stars thing. And I know Mati has said that he believed Real Madrid would make the final from this side, and he believed out of those three teams, Liverpool had the best chance of winning the quadruple. So look, if you believe in all of that stuff, and you've got to take it into account. I feel sometimes there's just a vibe in sport, and a feeling. Um, it does. It's starting to feel that way. Real Madrid. I know a lot's been made of um, their history in the Champions League. They know how to win the competition, and if they keep showing this sort of character to win games that they probably shouldn't win, then yeah, it starts to give you that vibe for sure. And Liverpool just keep chugging along. So I'm not going to comment on that one because definitely not going to jinx that, especially with a game against United coming up tomorrow morning. But yeah, that's funny how I think we both felt that after this weekend. And um, there was one thing that you said last pod that I wanted to touch on because I was talking about positions, and obviously we've gone through the centre backs. Um, You said that you thought Luka Modric was the best central midfielder in the world. My question to you is: do you have a tier of top central midfielders in the world, um, or is Luka Modric just that far ahead that you put him by himself as the best central midfielder in the world? And also, maybe you should go into what you mean by central midfielder because obviously there's different roles within the role, really.
Yeah, because the one that obviously immediately will spring to like everyone's mind is Kevin De Bruyne, and but they can it's hard to explain, but like I think Modric he's a little bit more complete because he can play deep as well, whereas De Bruyne I haven't exactly seen him play as like a deep lying playmaker, and Modric can play as a number 10 as well. So he's shown capability to play, and he's shown capability to play as box to box. So he's shown that he can play deep. He's shown that he can play box to box, and he's shown that he can play as a 10. Whereas De Bruyne for me, he's only really shown that he can play as like a 10 on the right or left hand side. Not exactly box to box, like in the classical sense of like a Lampard or a Gerrard. But I personally believe, and this isn't like my bias because I'm Croatian, I think that he's more complete just because he can play a variety of positions, of a wider variety of positions to De Bruyne. If I'm going to compare him to like previous center mids, or like who he reminds me of, like he reminds me a lot of a combination between Iniesta and Xavi. Xavi didn't really dribble past players as much, whereas Iniesta used to dribble past players for fun, and he has the passing range of a Xavi and like the control of a game like a Xavi, but he also has the dribbling technique of an Iniesta. So they're sort of that echelon of midfielders that I'd compare him most to, rather than comparing him to a Lampard or a Gerrard or a Scholes.
So firstly, I think on the De Bruyne point, I definitely think De Bruyne, and I've seen him do it earlier in his City career. I mean, when he first came, he played as a 10 when he first came from Wolfsburg. But then in the earlier Guardiola days, he sort of played more as an 8, as a box-to-box player. And now in the recent times, he's been pushed back into the 10. I honestly think I prefer him as a more complete midfield player who can show off everything he can do because I think he can be dynamic and he can get up and down the pitch and he's not lightweight in there. He can win his duels. But having said that, he's so exceptional in this 10 role as well that how can you really argue against it? But when he plays as that complete midfielder, Kevin De Bruyne, the one that springs straight away to my mind when he plays as more of the number 8 is Steven Gerrard. Because I just think he can do everything. He can deliver that ball into the box. He can shoot. He can drive the team forward from there. I just think he's fantastic there. So I have seen him do different roles. I know a couple of years ago in a game where City went to Anfield, Guardiola was very keen to make sure that they were able to play through Liverpool's press. So De Bruyne played a sort of deeper lying role in that game, which was probably the wrong move because they needed prowess going forward, and that's why you don't see him play as a deeper liar, and that's why you don't see Modric play as a deep lying playmaker too much either. But the interesting thing that I took away from what you were saying straight away was you only compared Luka Modric to one of his peers, which was Kevin De Bruyne. So straight away that tells me that you have those two in a tier of their own. And the other thing it tells me is there's probably a real lack of quality in that type of essential midfielder in the world today. Because back in the day, I guess you had Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes, Ronaldinho could do a bit of everything in there. Kaka, I mean, could do a bit of everything. More tens, but they could still do things that a midfielder could do. And now we're seeing it, and you compare him to De Bruyne, and then that's it for you. And honestly, off the top of my head, I'm struggling to find anyone else. I mean,
Hang
another
on.
emerging central midfielder is
I'll give
probably
it.
Bernardo Silva.
Yeah,
He's the
I'll
only,
give a
maybe the
shout.
only.
I just want to cut you off. Sorry, but I'll give a shout to Bayern Thiago. But Thiago has been injured most of his time at Liverpool, but Thiago at Bayern, especially in that final treble winning season, he would have been up there for me if he had stayed injury free at Liverpool, and he showed a lot of it now in this game against City. He has the potential to be up there as well, but just injuries have held him back.
Yeah, and that's something that's followed him his whole career, which has probably held him back exactly as you say, from being always mentioned in that top tier. I mean, when he gets a run of games together, then you start hearing the buzz around him again, and I think that's what's happening for him at Liverpool this season. I think since Liverpool put this run together and he's playing more games, they've been able to control possession so much better, and he makes such a difference to the team. And he as well has adapted to the speed that Liverpool play at, because while last season was very hard to judge because there was so much turmoil with injuries at Liverpool last season, he always looked, it was his passing. He was always passing sort of 2 feet rather in front of people to let them go forward, or he was passing these sort of floaty balls across field that made players wait. But now we're seeing that he's accustomed to the Liverpool speed of play where he can actually deliver the passes in the right moments, in the right way for players to really go forward with force. But that's definitely a good call. He probably lacks the assists and look, I know a lot's been made of Luka Modric hasn't scored many goals. I know Rakitic. There was this stupid meme that I saw about Modric being compared to Xavi and Iniesta when he's not even the best Croatian midfielder in the league. I mean, I'm all for what Rakitic has done this season. He's been fantastic, to be fair. But what Luka Modric has done at age 36, and really being a key player for Real Madrid in this incredible Champions League run, is really something else. And to still be in the top tier of central midfielders at age 36 is really testament to how good that guy is. But I must also say it's somewhat telling that there is a lack of quality in that central midfield. And one example that springs to mind to sum this up is we all rave about Pedri, and rightly so. But given the lack of anyone in his way in that position in world football, you could almost say that he's maybe the third best central midfielder in the world at the moment. I mean, and I don't think, as good as he's been, I don't think he should already be at that level at this age.
Yeah, look, I think he's a decent shout. Garvey would probably be in there as well. Like, apparently he's like the 1B to Pedri's 1A in that team. He probably doesn't have it.
Shout out
Yeah.
Shout out to Verratti as well at PSG. I haven't mentioned him, but another.
I don't rate Verratti too highly, to be honest. Like, every time I've seen him play, like, he's just been erratic. He's been like he doesn't have any discipline. if he could just sort out that part of his game, then yeah, sure. But like it just yeah, for me, not really. One player that I will give a shout out to is Kovacic, and he's especially shown it at Chelsea. But similar to Thiago, he's had his fair share of injuries this season. I think he's missed like a lot of this season due to injury. And even before going, like he was injured most of his time at Real as well. Like he just keeps picking up these niggling little injuries. But he's a very decent shout out as well.
But, and another one, while you're talking about injuries as well, another one to shout out is Goretzka at Bayern as well.
Oh yeah, like he looked like an absolute beast in that treble winning season, especially when he came back after COVID. Like he looked like he turned into the Incredible Hulk or something. That's how much he bulked up. But yeah, like you know how you mentioned like there just doesn't seem to be as many like, and I guess this can obviously be a topic that we can like deep dive into like at another time, but like. And I mentioned this in our friends group chat the other day. Like when I linked a clip to like it was like a 2-minute clip to Ronaldo, just like in his first stint at United when he was absolutely ripping up players. Like he was doing all these tricks and flicks and all this stuff like step overs and all these like I said that these types of flair type players are they dying out because there just doesn't seem to be as many now. Like back then you could mention Ronaldinho, you could mention Quaresma, Iron Robin, like a lot of these players that would incorporate tricks into their arsenal of beating players, and they were more willing to beat players 1-on-1 or 2v1. Whereas now, like one of our friends did mention Neymar, and I gave a shout out to Mahrez, but there just doesn't seem to be as many. So is that just because the game has evolved and players are more adept at defending better because they do sort of more zonal defending rather than one-on-one defending. So that's another thing, like maybe with the midfielder discussion, because I've read that before where the reason why the number 10 role has died is because the speed of the game has changed, and you're sort of skipping that player in between the midfield and forward line these days. And this one that came straight to mind was Pirlo as well. He's a very decent shout out. Well, along with that sort of Modric, Xavi, Iniesta group of players that play very similar. But yeah, like what's your take on that? Do you think that these types of players, like those sort of upper echelon midfielders, they're dying out because the game has changed and like the coaching has sort of become more robotic, I guess, where we're developing the same type of player, or is it just like a generational thing where maybe we need to wait another 5 or 10 years for that next generation to sort of come through and step up?
You pretty much took the words out of my mouth, and in fact, you bringing up, I've been on the number 10 hill for a while. I don't think the traditional number 10 has existed for years and will ever exist again in the game, because the athleticism of all of these players now at the top level means there's no space in between them. And you brought up the player Pirlo, who, if you look at his career arc, he started his career as a number 10. And then the game, even while he was still playing, Ancelotti saw that the game was it's getting too quick for him to still be a number 10 because he's not dynamic enough. So yeah, his range of passing is fantastic, but we can't use it in that space anymore because that space doesn't exist anymore. Not for a player who can't beat a challenge or get away from a man in that midfield. So what did he do? Fantastically, he put him as a deep lying playmaker. I'm not suggesting that's the first time that's ever been done in history, obviously, but he just took him away from that congestion and let him have more time on the ball, and he was able to dictate play there anyway, and that's always been traditionally what a number 10 their qualities have been. So now a number 10's traditional qualities are better used as a deep line playmaker, whether that be as the holding midfielder or even one of the three centre back. So I thought that was interesting how you brought that example, and that's the one I'll always go to when I talk about the number 10 dying. And then you look at the kind of players who play number 10 now. It's Kevin De Bruyne, who's never been sluggish. He's a sneaky good athlete in there. Even Antoine Griezmann, second striker, number 10. I mean, he's a former winger. Messi plays in that role. He started on the wing. So you've got to have that dynamism in that role now because there's no space. So you've got to, whatever space there is in there, you've got to be so quick to use it. In terms of the flair thing, and you said it while you were asking the question, the way, for me, a lot of it's the way we develop players now. I think kids are overcoached. I don't think kids should be, up until about the age of 12, I don't think there should be any formal coaching for kids. And I think the only role that coaches should have up until the age of 12 is giving kids a safe environment to play football. But within that, I think we should let the kids sort it out themselves within reason. I think it would be interesting to learn from kids what their perspective on football is, and let's see what they do before we feel the need to rush in and say, "Oh, you've got to strike the ball like this," or "Oh, you've got to control the ball like this." Why don't we let kids come up with what they can do? And you know what? Maybe we'll see something different, and maybe different things work for different kids. So when we see a player who maybe strikes the ball not in the conventional way, why don't we let it happen? See if it has a success rate, and rather than try and coach it out, ask why are you striking the ball like that? And maybe we can learn some things off kids at that age because their creativity hasn't been crushed. But now top clubs want kids in their academies at age 5 and 6. It's ridiculous. And I'm not suggesting they're being over, or I kind of am, because they shouldn't be in that academy environment from that age anyway. But I just think that crushes creativity from the start because we want players to be super effective. And if that's our goal, I think we're doing well in achieving that goal. But as much as I'm an elitist and I want to see like in sporting terms, as much as I want to see these great performances, I want to see it done with individual character in the game. And I guess I somewhat agree that the flair of the game has changed its face. I wouldn't say it's gone out of the game, but it's a different form. We're not seeing, maybe you could compare Ronaldinho of 20 years ago to Kevin De Bruyne now. They're both the best number 10s in the world. They do it in completely different ways. And to be fair, I think South America will keep producing players a little bit like that, because obviously there's so many developing nations and kids will just be playing on the street from a young age. So they'll learn the game in that way. But if you just compare and contrast the styles of Ronaldinho to a Kevin De Bruyne, it's chalk and cheese. I mean, Ronaldinho imprints his individualism and his character and his love of sort of, you can see it, his love of playing in the streets or playing in the beaches of Brazil. Whereas Kevin De Bruyne looks like a supreme athlete who's been coached fantastically well and who has a great level of natural ability. And he combines all those things. I'm not saying it's wrong that it's done that way, but for me personally, I would prefer to just let individuals bring a bit of their own flair into the game, like you say. So I guess that's my take on that.
Yeah, I think the point where you mentioned that like clubs are picking up players now at like raw ages of 5 and 6, like I think that is too early. But now with so much money in football, like you do want to find the next talent. So, and I know in some countries, I think it's like illegal to sign players under the age of 16 or like offer them professional contracts. But then in other countries, I think it's legal to give a 14 or 13-year-old a contract and stuff like that. And I know that we obviously never made it as professionals, but I first started playing for a club at 11 years old. Obviously, I wanted to play earlier, but like I went to Croatian school, and that was on Saturdays, and I think the earlier age groups, like under tens and under, they played on Saturday mornings, so that conflicted with what my mum and what my parents wanted for me. So I had to wait till under 11s when they played on Sundays to start playing. I'm not sure about when you started playing, but like yeah, I started as an 11-year-old. Like who knows how I would have turned out if I started as a 5 or 6-year-old, because those programs were definitely available in Australia. But yeah, like that's I think I do agree with you that they're probably being overcoached these days.
Yeah, and I think that was a really good question. So thanks for asking that one. Before we go back to England and talk a little bit about the race for the top four and preview the big fixtures in the Premier League in the midweek, just briefly touching, I don't think you watched the Sociedad Betis game, but a big game for top four aspirations over in Spain. 0-0 draw. It was a decent 0-0 draw. I think these two teams have a fair bit of quality, but I wouldn't put them above Atletico Madrid in terms of quality. So I'm still hoping that Atletico hold on to that fourth spot, which it looks like they'll do after I was reading a 100th minute penalty for Carrasco. Got them the 3 points in their fixture on the weekend. So obviously the draw between Sociedad and Betis really helps Atletico because neither of those teams who are going for top four are helped. Big bad David Silva got himself sent off in the 93rd minute. But you know what I was thinking? I was thinking what a joy it was to watch him play football again. I mean, I hadn't seen him in a while, so it just reminded me of how good he was at Man City as a central midfielder who, if we're doing all these comparisons, he's got to get a mention in there at some point as well. It was my first real chance to watch Alexander Isak up front, and I thought he looks like a good striker, but he doesn't look like a clinical striker. He looks like he can be a nuisance, somewhat link up the play, definitely act as a target man with his pace and strength. But he had a few chances in this game and he didn't put them away. So in terms of him looking to play maybe at a top club, it's probably not the right time for him. But he should be probably looking for a move somewhere. And there might be a few teams that we mention in top four discussion when we go back to England. But moving away from Spain, just quickly to Italy, I know you did watch this game, Napoli against Roma. Roma are able to put another dent in Napoli's title hopes at home, nonetheless, as Napoli just keep faltering at home for some reason. And look, a point didn't help either team again because Roma remain, I think, 5 points behind Juve in that fourth spot. They could have narrowed that gap to three. Napoli just haven't been convincing ever since they started the season. I don't know if you saw anything in this game, but I again was left pretty unconvinced by Napoli. I thought they had good moments because they have good players, but all in all, just ever since that first 10 games of the season, they've really been scratching and clawing just to get anything to happen for them.
Yeah, like when I was watching the game, it just seemed like they were creating chances, but they just weren't putting them away. Like and they did seem pretty solid at the back, and especially in the first half, they contained Roma very well. Um, but then yeah, like I guess in the final, like I think the goal was scored like around the 90th minute, wasn't it? From memory.
Yeah. Milan, sorry, Roma, yeah, equalised in added time.
Yeah, so it was it was Napoli's definitely to win, and they did seem like they were in control for most of the game, but yeah, they just seemed to drop the ball in the final minutes.
Yeah, definitely. And that Serie A title race, the more I see it, the more I think it's Inter. We're going to go back to back. I think they have the most quality in their squad. AC is still doing quite well, but just for me, if I had to put any money on it, it would be on Inter to see that out. They can go top with their game in hand. So, like we keep saying, that Italian title race is interesting, if nothing else. I mean, the quality. We're not talking Liverpool and City quality, but at least we've got something fascinating there. And I guess this could act as a segue into our top four talk, but I'm sure you saw the performance of Tammy Abraham for Roma in that game, and just wondering if he might be the striker that Arsenal could look at getting in the off season.
He seemed a little bit wasteful to me. So
he did miss his only big chance, and that was the big ding.
And I heard the commentator mention something that, like, out of all of the strikers in Serie A, he what was the stat? I think he's had the most amount of chances, but he's also had the most amount of misses, like by far, compared to any other striker. So he's missed the most amount of chances of any striker in the league. And I think he only has like 15 or 16 goals to his name, which it's a decent return, but it just seems for me he doesn't seem clinical enough. Maybe that's because he's still young. Like, he's still in his early 20s, isn't he?
Yeah.
So maybe that will come with a little bit of age, because, like, if we it's not necessarily a fair comparison, but like the one that immediately comes to mind is Salah. When he first came to Liverpool, it seemed like he was getting 4 or 5 chances a game, but he was only really putting away one or even none. And then I think in his second season, that's when he became more clinical, and then his third season he became even more clinical. So he's become more clinical going into his late 20s, early 30s. So and then obviously, like, going back into his, like, when he was playing at Roma or even Chelsea, like, he wasn't as clinical as what he is now. So that's come with age and more practice, more and more composure. So maybe as he gets a couple more years under his belt, like, he's still 24, so he's coming into, like, now he's only coming into his prime as a from a physical aspect, I suppose.
Yeah, and I just thought he was an interesting one to bring up because obviously he has Premier League experience. He is English. I don't know how long he'd want to stay at Roma for. He'd probably be looking for a move back to the Premier League at some point. Roma don't look like they'll finish top four, nor do Arsenal, so Arsenal might have to narrow their scope for it. Although, just before we go into the top four talk, well, in fact, I want to correct you on one thing, on the Mo Salah thing, because that first season he came to Liverpool, he scored 32 goals in the league and broke the record for most goals in a season. So, but I do definitely get your point, because he was the kind of player who got a lot of chances in a game. He didn't look the most clinical, but he was so energetic and so forceful. And to bring in another basketball reference, he almost looked like Russell Westbrook when he still had all his athleticism, in terms of he wasn't the most skillful, but he would just batter down that wall by running into it repeatedly. So I get your point in terms of he could be wasteful in chances, but he still scored still the standing record for most goals in a Premier League season. But yeah, I just thought that Tammy Abraham, and the thing I wanted to tell you to do, can you do this thing for me? When we're talking about the top four in England, can you, whenever I say that someone is out of the race or someone looks odds on to finish top four, can you just stop me right there? Because what the hell is going on in the race for top four in England? Man United are only 3 points away from it now. What's going on?
Well, you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, this season is sort of reminding you of, I think it was the 2018, 2019 season when Emery was there.
Yeah.
And, like, there was like 3 or 4 teams, like Leicester, Arsenal, Tottenham, and was one other team. I think even United were in that, where you did not know. Neither of those teams wanted top four. They were just dropping points week in, week out, pretty much. And I think it came down to the final day of the Premier League that it was decided. And yeah, like this was the perfect weekend for, from an Arsenal perspective, to claw back those 3 points that were dropped against Brighton, and they dropped the ball. United almost dropped the ball as well. Like they gave away a 2-goal lead, and then Ronaldo came to the rescue once again. And yeah, Tottenham did what Tottenham does, and they dropped the ball. And yeah, Brighton's now taken 6 points away in total from, I guess, like combined from Tottenham and Arsenal to sort of shake things up.
Yeah, they're North London.
Yeah, so it seems like no team really wants it, and like it's opened the door up to West Ham potentially as well. Like I know they're on 52, so
but
they're 5 points off.
They've taken their eye off top four in recent weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, they could only get a draw this weekend, and they lost to Brentford the weekend before. So, but Brighton, I mean, Tottenham didn't drop the ball. Brighton just played them off the park. Brighton killed Tottenham in that game. Tottenham didn't get a sniff, and if you changed the uniforms, like you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. You would have thought, yeah, that's how the game should play out, because Brighton were that much better than Tottenham. They were probably better than Arsenal when they went to the Emirates. So Graham Potter's doing a great job. I didn't necessarily agree with that hire when he first came in from Swansea after not accomplishing much in the Championship, but he's somewhat proving me wrong, especially this season. That Brighton team, they play some really good football, but they just lack the striker, as so many people say. But really, they battered Tottenham off. Tottenham barely got a kick. They didn't look like a Conte team. And they looked like the old Tottenham, the one that Conte was complaining about just a couple of months ago or a month or so ago. So this top four race is just completely up in the air. And the shocking one, and I'm going to touch on Ronaldo in a minute, but the shocking thing to see when I look at the table is United 3 points off top four. I mean, how has that happened? After they lost to Leicester, everyone's like, oh, they can't finish top four. And then all of a sudden they're back in it. But it just seems like they need Ronaldo to score a hat-trick if they're going to win games now. They can't win games if he doesn't score that many goals. And obviously, watching that Ronaldo hat-trick, his 30th past the age of 30, I believe he made us all aware of, as he likes to sometimes do. He likes to make people aware of his accomplishments. But still, to have, I think it's 60 career hat tricks and 30 either side of 30. That's staggering. A lot of players would be delighted with 60 goals for a career, but he's got 60 hat tricks for a career, so that's ridiculous. But to somewhat put it into context, I did a sort of dive, maybe not deep, but I call them the old guy 15 goal seasons. So I went through Transfer Market to look at the oldest goal scorers in a league, and then the names that stood out, I looked out how many goals they'd scored in a league past the age of 35. Ronaldo has now accomplished that 3 times in 1920. And he started the season at 34 years old, but finished the season at 35. So I'm still qualifying that. But he scored 31 goals in that Serie A season in 1920. And then the next season, he scored 29 goals at 36. And then obviously now at 37, he's on 15 for United for the season. The only other guy who did it multiple times in recent history is Zlatan. Zlatan in 16-17 at age 35, again started the season I believe at 34 years old, but 17 goals for United. And then in 2021, just last season, at age 39, so the oldest guy to do it, who I found, 15 goals for AC last season. And then the other names we have are a bit more obscure. Fabio Quagliarella did it in season 18-19 in Serie A. 26 goals at 36 years of age. I mean, that's right up there. That's not just a 15-goal season. That's a massive season. Another Italian, Antonio Di Natale, season 13-14, 17 goals for Udinese at age 36. Then looking at La Liga, Adoriz at Bilbao, season 16-17, 16 goals at age 36. Klaas-Jan Huntelaar at Ajax in season 18-19, 16 goals at 35. And then just last season, Burak Yilmaz at Lille scored 16 goals at age 35 or older. So I guess my question to you after this deep dive is, does this accomplishment, I guess, shock you? I guess put Ronaldo at a higher echelon? I don't think you can, but does it just reinforce Ronaldo's argument in the greatest of all time case? Or do you see it more as the benefits because of some of the names I've maybe mentioned who have done this? Is it not simply, but is it more due to the benefits of the era that he plays in for you that he's able to keep doing this at this age?
If you're talking about the benefits of the era from a sports science perspective, where we've seen players have longer careers, so go into their late 30s, then yeah, like, because players were retiring, 20, 30 years ago, they were retiring in their early to mid 30s, whereas now they're retiring into their mid to late 30s. And especially for a striker now as well, that has to be mobile and and quick and everything as well. Like they can have more prolonged careers, whereas like we only really saw goalkeepers play into their late 30s. So that's definitely a big aspect of it. But I want to also give, I think, because of how poor United have been as a team, I think we need to give Ronaldo even more credit for the performances that he's putting in, because I believe if he went to City, like he might have originally, although I have my suspicions about that whole City rumor. I think that was just a play to get United into the talks. I think that him and his agent played the media and played United to force them into a bid. I think if he did go to City, he would have had close to 30 goals if he played as a central striker for them. Whether he would have fit their system or not, that's another case. But if he was a regular starter for them, I think in that team he would have had closer to 30.
I got to disagree just because of the system point that you brought up. I don't think City are able to be as dominant in games if Ronaldo's up front, because they can't press with the same intensity that they do. They can't counter press in the same way. And also in possession, they can't have quite the same numerical superiority in the centre of midfield if they've got a traditional striker who's playing up against the defenders. So it completely changes the way City plays if he's their striker. But I'll disagree on 30. I think 30 is a bit too high, especially if we're only talking about league goals, which I was with those examples. I don't think he'd quite be at 30, but probably still be around 15 to 20.
I think he'd be over City, 20.
It's still asking a lot. I mean, Mo Salah this season's only, so it'd still be asking a lot, but that's such a what if, because it completely changes the way City play.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't think City could be as dominant if he was their striker, while they still would be dominant.
Yeah, I guess it's how, like, it's obviously all hypothetical, and how Guardiola would have set up the team, and like whether he would have had Ronaldo as a starter or whether he would have been introducing him as a plan B in the final, 20, 30 minutes. Because I'm just like, the thing that immediately pops into my mind is like how many crosses or balls in over the top that City like to play, like especially those in swingers into the back post that they love to play from either side. Ronaldo would just be gobbling them up. Like he would be loving those deliveries, and he doesn't. He gets barely any service at United. So
Yeah.
in that aspect, I think he would be on the end of a lot of those balls that are put into the box. And but then yeah, on the overall play, when they're not putting those balls in the box, I'm not sure whether he'd fit their system, because he's not the type of player, and he's shown that at United he's not the type of player to press from the front. He doesn't necessarily have that, or he hasn't shown that he has that in his game.
Yeah, definitely. But that's a really good point you make about City with their crosses, because I think this season in particular, especially early on in the season, I thought City were making a real concerted effort to put more crosses in the box. Not necessarily because they thought they had an advantage in terms of their players being able to win headers, because obviously they don't really play with the striker. But I just thought they were making an effort when they got into position not to overplay it. They would rather put a ball into the box. We know we don't have the height or that kind of striker who loves that delivery. But what it will do is mean your centre backs have to deal with this cross into the box. So they either have to head it away, or, I mean, if they want to get really risky, they try and play it. But we've still got players arriving into the box. So if you do that, we've got to counter press you straight away. So I think it was more something that they wanted to unbalance the opposition defense and make them deal with more threat by putting more balls into the box, and then they could contain the play and get those second balls and start playing from positions where the defense weren't expecting, more so than playing to anyone's strength. So that's a good point. If they had Ronaldo there, then all of a sudden they're playing to a striker's strengths as well as doing what else they wanted to accomplish. But for me, I guess I'm kind of torn on this accomplishment. Like, I'm not taking anything away from it, but when I am reading out names like Di Natale, I know he was fantastic old guy striker. He almost got better with age, but like Di Natale, Quagliarella, Aditz Adoriz, even Huntelaar and Yilmaz, they're all very recent. The earliest one we had was Di Natale in 13-14. The rest have all happened in the last 5 years. So, I mean, you've got to probably give some credence to the fact that, like you say, the sports science and the nutrition and everything around the game, the professionalism around the game, is really helping players nowadays accomplish these feats. Whereas in the past, it would have been harder to be that effective at such an old age. But at the same time, it's not a long list that I read out of names. And obviously, Yilmaz and Huntelaar did it in the French and Dutch leagues, respectively. It's not the Premier League. This is the first guy since Zlatan to do it in the Premier League. And those two guys are definitely all-time greats. So, yeah, so I think for those reasons, I'm a little bit torn, but nonetheless, a fantastic accomplishment. I guess I don't know how much you've been following and I'm going to use another basketball reference, the third one of the pod, but and we always make this comparison. It's you got to compare Cristiano Ronaldo to someone like LeBron James, and it's funny how their team seasons have been somewhat so disappointing, but they've been able to perform at a level that we haven't really seen for a guy of that age at that level of competition. So, I mean, while you want to give Ronaldo so much more credit for scoring the goals that he has in this dysfunctional team, at the same time, as the highest paid player at the club, the function of the team doesn't all rest on his shoulder, but it must rest on his shoulder somewhat. He's a leader. He's the all-time great going into that team. He's the highest paid player. So when the team is dysfunctional, he does need to take a portion of that blame as well. And for me, when I'm watching LeBron and the Lakers, I feel exactly the same way. I'm like, yeah, this is great. He's able to score so many points at this age, but the team cannot function properly, and you must take some portion of the blame for the team not being able to function properly, because you are the leader and you're the all-time great playing on the team.
I think the point that you bring up about the function or dysfunction of the team is a good one, because I've heard also, and I think you might have mentioned it, that last season Ollie was starting to get some kind of semblance of a system being played by his team, and Ronaldo being thrown into that mix sort of unhinged it, or sort of undone that work that he was putting in, because you need to put Ronaldo into the team. Like, he's your highest paid player. He's the biggest name in probably in sports, not just football. And if you're not playing him, why the hell did you sign him, and why the hell are you paying him 500 grand a week? So while yes, he has won United a lot of games, would they have maybe have won those games anyway if he wasn't playing? So that's another interesting point that I want to bring up about that, because yeah, like the team was, some would argue, was functioning without him, and was functioning better without him.
And it's hard. It's hard because from the outside looking in, I thought there was a lot of optimism for Ronaldo coming back, and this guy's, as we said, last season alone, he scored 29 goals in Serie A. So you're not getting a guy who's past it; you're getting a guy who's still scoring goals. Um, but I think I sent a message to one of our friends before the season started about United, and I thought, yeah, they've made some good signings. Obviously, Varane came in as well. Great. So it looks like on paper that should be a title challenging squad. But I also brought up the question of how's Ronaldo going to fit into this squad? I mean, Bruno Fernandes was the man last season. He was the guy who was the best player on the team, and he acted like it. So obviously, how does that mess with Fernandes that Ronaldo's coming in? Because Ronaldo doesn't come into a club and play second fiddle to anyone. How does obviously Solskjaer deal with the whole Cristiano Ronaldo factor and trying to fit him in the team? And I think we've seen, while he has bailed United out and he is on 15 goals for the season, and he is maybe the one shining light for United's season, along with maybe De Gea, the team didn't function in the same way when he played. So I think that's obviously, like you said, a really interesting point. And I think the dysfunction, not just in the playing style in terms of him not pressing and maybe not linking up like he used to, but also in the character aspect, in the dressing room, in the ego battles. It'd be hard to just say that this had no effect. I think the Ronaldo signing had a positive effect in terms of goals, but a negative effect in terms of playing style and harmony within the squad. But I mean, a lot of other United players have contributed to disharmony in that squad, and we know the problems that United have. So, with all of that being said, um, tomorrow morning, tonight for you, do you give them any chance going away to Anfield?
Just before we go on to that, I just want to mention also, I want to just get your really quick take. You mentioned like sort of like him possibly bringing disharmony and maybe undermining, not necessarily because he's actually playing politics and undermining, but because of his presence. Do you think he's also undermined the captaincy of Maguire, because Ronaldo is seen as a leader, as like a leader of men, not just, and also a leader within world football? And do you think that that's also then given Maguire a sort of inferiority complex, because he did have a very good Euro, and last season he was pretty good um, for United, and now he's just a shadow of himself. So do you think that that also may have, and we've also heard rumors of, bust ups between Ronaldo and Maguire and all that stuff. So do you reckon that's also had an effect there? Just before we go on to the game.
Yeah, I think if you're captain of Manchester United, you got to be stronger than that. I know that Ronaldo is a huge figure, but if you're captain of this massive club, you've got to lead with the confidence, no matter And you've got to expect players of that caliber to come into a club of that size. So when you're captain of that club, that comes with the territory. So what kind of psychological effect that had on Maguire, I don't know. If it did have the effect that you may be insinuating there, then I believe that's mental weakness on Maguire's part. And just from what we can observe from the outside, I think Maguire's undermined his own captaincy through his performances because he's been dreadful this season. And the performances are the bread and butter. And you know it as well as I do, having been in teams and been in that environment. Everyone can sense who the good players are and who the bad players are. And when you're not a good player and you're captain, I mean, not a top player, and you're captain of a club of that size, then your captaincy is almost automatically undermined by the fact that you're not a great leader and you're not a great player. So what are you falling back on to inspire these players around you? What's getting them to think, oh, I really want to listen to that guy because he's either the best leader in the club or he's the best player at the club. But Maguire has neither of those things going for him.
Yeah, and who knows what's playing on his mind. So yeah, with that, like you said, we'll get into the game. And to answer your question, I don't, unless Liverpool play a rested squad. But even with a rested squad, I don't really give United much chance. Especially even though they won against Norwich, but they almost blew it against Norwich. Yeah, I got little to no faith that that they can get the job done. And look, from an Arsenal perspective, I'm hoping for a Liverpool win, and I'm hoping for a Liverpool thumping as well, because that then just gives them a worse goal difference, which helps us.
Yeah, definitely. And that was the next one I wanted to touch on just before we end the pod. But as the objective podcast host, I agree with that. As a Liverpool supporter, I'm nervous because you've got to be nervous when you're going for the title and your margin for error is so little, and then all of a sudden you come up against the United team who you should beat comfortably, but who are no doubt motivated. Well, actually, I don't know about no doubt because from what we've seen of United, there might be some doubt that they're motivated to stop Liverpool from really challenging and chasing this title down. But I mean, from the fans' perspective, I've got to be nervous. But from the objective perspective, I give United little to no chance as well in this game. And maybe moving on to another team and your team, what chance do you give them going to Chelsea and picking up the result that they need for this top four race?
That's a really tough one. Like if we had Partey in the squad, and also if we had Tierney, I would have given them a pretty good chance. But like having both of those players out, it seems to have just thrown the overall cohesion of the team out a little bit. Like they've just been out of whack. They've been blunt up front, more so since the international break. And yeah, I don't really give them much chance. However, they did play. They're having the same sort of struggles that Liverpool and City are having against teams that play with a low block, because Brighton sort of played with a low block, not as low as Southampton's, and Arsenal, based on the whole over like 90 minutes, they did play well, but they just couldn't break them down. Like they just had no threat. And Forster did have a tremendous game. Like I think he pulled off like 3 or 4 absolute like miraculous stops. Like you'd think that he's the England #1 with those saves. And maybe since it's Chelsea, maybe we will then be able to see a little bit more of an open play, even though they should have a better defense on paper. But they're not going to be sitting with a low block of like 9 or 10 players behind the ball. They're going to be playing with like 5 or 6 players behind the ball when we're attacking them. So maybe that will leave more space for Arsenal to attack and exploit. So I do think there'll be more goals in it. Whether that's Chelsea scoring 2 or 3 or Arsenal scoring 2 or 3, I definitely do think that there's more. It shouldn't finish as like a 0-0 or a 1-0. I think it'll finish with like 3 or more goals in it overall.
Yeah, and I definitely give Arsenal more chance than I give United. Looking at it objectively.
If from that perspective, yeah, I give Arsenal more chance against Chelsea than United against Liverpool. But having said that, if Arsenal is going up against Liverpool, I'd give Arsenal more chance against Liverpool than United against Liverpool as well. So there's also that.
That one's almost a tough one for me without Partey in that midfield, particularly.
Okay.
I know Tierney as well, but those injuries have really, really hurt your prospects going forward. So the most chance I give you in this game is Chelsea have to rest players from the weekend. They have to come in with a somewhat second string team. And look, you guys are in a really bad moment. 3 on the spin and losing to Southampton just after they've been annihilated 6-0 at home to Chelsea is really not a good look. It cannot be good for confidence. I don't want to say this is last chance for Arsenal to really mount a challenge because you're going to stop me from saying things like that until the end of the season on this top 4 race. Because as we've seen, Tottenham can lose to anyone. United might get humiliated. I mean, so we just don't know with these 3 teams. But if Arsenal go 4 on the spin losing, it's not over because of the ineptitude of the other teams. But I mean, you need to put some sort of results together at some point.
Yeah.
And I don't give them a massive chance against Chelsea because I think Chelsea are a good team, but maybe a changed team and maybe Chelsea having nothing to really play for in the league might just help you enough.
Yeah, and I think if you also put into context, like even if we lose against Chelsea, we're only 3 points behind Tottenham because we have that game in. This is our game in hand. So this isn't necessarily even a top 4 destroyer for us, but it does. This game hurts our chances less than what the previous 3 games have. Like even if we had we beaten Brighton and Southampton and still lost to Crystal Palace, like we'd be top 4, and I think we'd have 3 points over Tottenham at the moment. It's the last 2 games that killed us, not necessarily the Crystal Palace game, because Crystal Palace have shown that they can beat City and they can draw to City. So it's the last 2 games that really killed us, and this game was never going to be one that decided our fate. But it's the games against the middle of the pack and the bottom of the pack that are really going to decide our fate. And right now we're dropping that because of how thin our squad is, which it's you can say that it's down to Arteta, I guess, for not signing anyone in January, but from what I've heard from people that work within football and everything like that, signing players in January, you're pretty much paying a premium as well. Like not only a player is not available, but if you want to get a player, you're going to sign them for a premium because you're signing them in the middle of the season. So yeah, if you want to pay like 30 or 40% more for a player in January, go ahead and break the books. But you can get that player for 10, 20 million less in the summer. So and they still had to clear out dead wood from the Wenger era, and I think that this next season moving forward, and this transfer window coming up is going to be the one that's most telling into how Arsenal are going to approach next season and how much, I guess, belief the board has in Arteta.
Yeah, and I guess I got to disagree in terms of that Crystal Palace result because it wasn't the result that like really dented your chances for top 4, but definitely the way the game played out in terms of the injuries that night is where it all shifted for me. And you just have to look at the 2 results since then. to see that and to see your point on the thinness of the squad really exemplified by that. But you know what? Arsenal have a real make or break week and a half coming. It's Chelsea, and and another thing that was interesting was just the way we were talking about that Chelsea game a couple of weeks ago was, look, we expect Arsenal to finish top four, and can they get a result against Chelsea to signify that they might be in the mix next season, challenging for even better things? But how things change in a couple of weeks, because now we're talking
Yeah.
about, well, they don't need to win this game because they're not expected to win this game. They're coming in terrible form, and they're just clinging on to the top four race now. So things change really quick in football. And then obviously after this game, it's United, and then it's West Ham, and then it's, I think, a game in between. I think it might be Leeds, and then it's Tottenham. So these are a massive few fixtures for Arsenal. And like we said, they need to do something with it. Even if they don't finish top four, they need to keep fighting to the end, because if they come away with only a couple of points from all these crucial fixtures, my confidence levels in Arteta will be at an all-time low. And I'll even start questioning whether he should be leading the club into next season. To be quite honest, if they show poorly in these games coming up and don't get wins, at least one or two, then I would really start questioning Arteta's future at the club.
I think the United one coming up on Saturday is going to be the make or break one in regards to the top four chances. West Ham, I think we have a bit of luck into where that fixture falls, because I think it's either side of their semi-final tie, if I'm not mistaken. So you would expect West Ham to rest players there. So that's also like that, because of that. That's an even bigger must win, because they're going to rest players. So that's like, well, you're going to be facing most likely a second string squad, so you need to beat them. Whereas like, again, at least against United are going to put their strongest 11 out. So it's going to be tougher. It's still not going to be acceptable if we lose, but it's going to be, I guess, understandable if we lose that game or draw that game. And then the Tottenham one is gonna. I think the Tottenham one is gonna be the real decider. Like if we lose that one, then yeah, it's I think it's 100% over. Then if we lose that one, but if we win that one or draw that one, then like I'd still give it like a 50-50 chance going into the end of the season.
Yeah, that race for the top four, it's almost like the Serie A title race. It's fascinating to watch.
No
The
one
quality
wants
might
it.
not be. Sorry?
No one wants it.
No one wants it. It does seem that way. And well, let's see how these midweek fixtures pan out, because they're two of the blue chippers in the Premier League, and they're gonna really go a long way to deciding titles and top four. So I'm looking forward to them. Even if I am a little bit nervous about the game tomorrow morning, but Nev, I think that's a good point for us. If you don't have anything else to add, I think that's a good point for us to say goodbye for the night, or the morning for you.
Yeah, I think that's we can go into these fixtures. Pretty excited. I'm definitely excited for tonight and tomorrow. So yeah, I can't wait to watch them and discuss them on the next pod.
Oh, to be a neutral must be fantastic. Nev, thank you very much for coming on, discussing football with me, and it's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day, and guys, listen to us again next time. Thanks, everyone.